Now, you were arrested and charged with the murder of Professor Markel on October 1, 2014. I'm sorry, 2016, correct?
Yes, sir.
Almost immediately, the state talked to your lawyers and offered you full immunity, a get-out-of-jail-free card, right?
I don't know if that was immediately.
Pretty soon after you got arrested, you were offered to cooperate against Charlie Adelson and the other Adelsons, and you would get to go home to your kids, right?
Yes, sir.
And your lawyers told you about that offer?
Yes, sir, they did.
You also saw an interview on TV while you were in jail in which one of the prosecutors mentioned this immunity offer, right?
Yes, sir.
You have 2 kids who are your world, right?
Yes, sir.
If you took the state's deal, then you would have been let out of jail immediately, right? That's what your lawyers told you.
If I took their deal? Yes, sir.
But you didn't take the offer.
No, I didn't.
Instead, you stayed in jail for 3 years before your first trial, right?
Yes, sir.
You stayed in jail through COVID after your first trial hung.
Yes, sir.
You still didn't cooperate. The deal was still open, right?
Well, the deal was to give up Charlie.
And you couldn't do that.
Because in order to give up Charlie, I had to give up Sigfredo, the father of my children, so I couldn't do that.
So while you're in jail, sitting in jail, during COVID, you knew there was still a deal possibility open for you, right? You could still take a deal. Your lawyers told you that.
Before COVID, after my mistrial?
Yes.
I believe so.
And you still didn't take the deal, right?
No.
Charlie Adelson didn't force you to take the deal, not take the deal, right?
No, I had no communication with Charlie.
He didn't pay for your attorneys.
He didn't pay for my attorneys, but there was word that my brother declined him paying for my attorneys.
Ma'am,
I had anything to do with him.
I know you have an agenda here, but just answer my questions.
Yes, sir.
Did Charlie Adelson pay for your attorneys?
No, sir, he did not.
Did anyone in the Adelson family pay for your attorneys?
No, sir.
Did anyone in the Adelson family pay any money to your kids?
No, sir.
You had nothing to do with Charlie Adelson, right? After the bump.
No, sir, I did not.
Now, the real reason you didn't cooperate, and you made it clear, is because Charlie Adelson had absolutely nothing to do with the murder of Professor Markel. Isn't that the case?
I didn't cooperate because in order to give up Charlie, I'd have to give up Sigfredo.
Well, let's talk about the testimony in your first trial. And don't worry, we're going to get to your proffers as well.
Okay.
But let's talk about the testimony in your first trial. You were asked, did you get the father of your children, Mr. Garcia, to commit a murder on behalf of Mr. Charlie Adelson? Answer, no, ma'am. Do you recall saying that?
Yes, sir.
You were asked, do you have information that Charlie Adelson was involved in this? Answer, do I have information? I don't have personal information. Do you recall that?
No, sir, I do not.
You don't recall saying that in your first trial?
No, sir, I do not.
Would you like to see a transcript of it?
Yes, I will.
I'll direct your attention to page 2800, lines 1 through 5.
Please read to yourself, ma'am.
Does that refresh your recollection that that's
Yes.
what you said?
Yes, sir, it does.
During your second trial, do you recall being asked, Charlie didn't ask you to do anything weird? Answer, no, ma'am. Like get someone to get a hitman to commit a murder of his ex-brother-in-law? No, ma'am. Do you recall those questions and that answer?
Yes, sir, I do.
Because you couldn't implicate Charlie, you went to trial, and the first trial hung. Isn't that the case?
Yes, sir.
A few weeks before your second trial, Charlie was arrested.
Yes,
Isn't that
sir.
the case?
Yes, sir.
The state waited and waited and waited for you to cooperate, and then they arrested him on the eve of your trial when you made it clear you weren't going to cooperate, right?
Yes, sir.
So you went to trial the second time, and this time you were convicted.
Yes, sir.
And you were convicted of first-degree murder and other charges, right?
Yes, sir.
A few weeks after your conviction, you were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, plus another 30 years. Do you recall that?
Yes, sir.
And you were transferred from the jail in Leon County to the state prison where you would spend the rest of your life, right?
Yes, sir.
Away from your family,
Yes, sir.
away from your children.
Yes, sir.
And you realize that there are only two ways to get out of that prison, right?
What are the two ways?
Well, one way was in a coffin, right?
Yes, sir.
And the other way was cooperating against Charlie Adelson, right?
No, sir. I wanted the truth to finally come out.
What are the only two ways that you can ever get out of prison, Miss Magbanua?
My appeal?
Oh, well, we'll get to that too. You have an appeal pending right now, right?
Yes, sir.
That claims that you're innocent.
Yes, sir.
Let's just make this clear to the jury. Ms. Kappelman has called you as a witness against this man who's presumed innocent. You've just testified that you did a murder, and you have an appeal pending right now in this county claiming your innocence. Isn't that true?
Yes, sir.
And lo and behold, weeks after you were convicted and sentenced to life with no parole, you went in and met with the state, right?
Yes, sir.
And you met with them not once, but twice.
Yes, sir.
And you met with them for hours.
Yes, sir.
A combined total of around 6 hours, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, we're going to get into that and all the lies that Ms. Kappelman didn't go through with you that you made during those interviews, but let's go back to the first trials first, okay? In each of those trials, you took the stand for your own defense, right?
Yes, sir.
And you took the same oath and looked at different jurors the same way that you look today, right?
Yes, sir.
And in your second trial, not only did you take an oath in this room, but isn't it true that you tried to get Sigfredo to lie for you?
No, sir, I did not.
Isn't it true that you were caught on a recording in the prison in which you were going to have Sigfredo Garcia come into your trial, your second trial, and say that he did the murder with Charlie Adelson all by himself?
No, sir.
You never were on a recording of
Never
that
said
fact.
that.
Your plan at your second trial wasn't to have Sigfredo Garcia testify on your behalf?
No, sir.
Are you aware that your lawyer opened up on that plan?
No,
In her
sir, I'm not
opening?
aware. No.
Well, did you sit through the trial?
Yes, sir, I did.
Did you sit through the trial when she said to the jury, you're going to hear from Sigfredo Garcia, who's going to say that the murder was between him and Charlie Adelson, and that you're just a victim of having bad taste in men?
He never came up.
He refused to come and testify, right?
I don't know if he refused. He just never, he was never called.
Are you aware that you and your lawyer subpoenaed him to come down to Leon County to testify on your behalf?
He was subpoenaed, but he just never showed up.
And he didn't
He
show
never
up?
took the stand.
Right. He was subpoenaed by you, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you got on the phone with him. You were caught because you're not supposed to talk to each other, right?
Yes, sir.
But you guys talk to each other because what you do is you call his mom, right?
Yes, sir.
And he calls his mom. Isn't that what you all do?
At that time, yes, sir.
Yeah, you call each other so that you could talk to each other through the mom. And during one of those calls, you asked him to come testify on your behalf. Isn't that what you did?
No, I did not ask him.
Okay. Well, we'll move on to some other lies. during your first trial, you were asked, you didn't ask Mr. Garcia to help this lady get her kids back in Tallahassee. Answer, no, ma'am. You didn't solicit him to commit a murder of Dan Markel. Answer, no, ma'am. Do you recall those questions and answers?
Yes, sir.
You were asked, well, back then, did you know someone by the name of Dan Markel? Answer, no, ma'am. In 2014, you learned that Wendi Adelson's divorce was already finalized, right? I learned that in court. I didn't know it before. Do you remember those,
Yes,
those
sir.
words? Those were lies, right?
Yes, I lied in my trials to save myself.
We'll keep going. You lied when you said that Charlie told you that Professor Markel had been in an accident, right?
I lied that. Say it again, sir.
Well, I'll ask you the questions. Do you remember having a conversation with Charlie Adelson about his brother-in-law being in an accident? Does that sound familiar to you? It
Yeah.
sounds familiar, yeah. That was a lie, right?
No, that's what Charlie said.
He
That
told
is-
you that he was in an accident. He'd tell you that there was a murder.
No, he told me he was in an accident.
So you didn't know about the murder of Dan Markel on July 18th. Is that what you're telling this jury?
No, not at that time.
When did you find out about the murder of Dan Markel?
It was later on.
Oh, really? So the money that you brought to the guys that Miss Kappelman brought up on opening, the money you brought up to the guys on July 19th, it was because Dan Markel was in an accident?
I didn't know that that was Dan Markel. Like, I didn't know his name.
Oh.
But there was
Oh.
a murder that happened, yes.
At the March 11th dinner that you had with Mr. Lacoste at Yardbird, Dan Markel's name wasn't mentioned?
No, sir.
Would it surprise you that Mr. Lacoste has testified to the opposite of that?
No, I haven't seen his testimony.
At your first trial, you were asked, did Charlie mention anything to you about a murder out of Tallahassee? So now it's not Dan Markel. It's just a murder out of Tallahassee. And your answer was no, ma'am. Question, did he mention anything about his ex-brother-in-law being murdered? Answer, no, ma'am. Do you recall those questions?
Yes, sir.
And those were lies, right?
Yes, I told you I lied. I lied in my trials to save myself.
I understand. Please let me keep going through them. There's a lot of them, so we'll take our time.
Yes, sir.
Now, you said you never saw any cash at Charlie's place. Do you recall that at trial?
He had cash, but I didn't know how much he had. I know he keeps cash in his safe.
But I thought you just testified moments ago that you never saw cash at his place. They didn't keep cash at his place. That supposedly his parents had to bring the cash. Isn't that what you just told this jury about 18 minutes ago?
An abundance of cash.
Have you seen his safe?
Yes, sir.
Have you ever seen it open?
Yes, sir.
Doesn't he keep a lot of cash that he collects on the top of his safe?
I mean, I'm not like looking in it, but every single time we used to go out, he used to grab some money from the safe and then take it with him.
Repeatedly during both trials, you said you worked at the Adelson Institute. You never worked at the Adelson Institute,
No,
right?
sir, I did not.
Now we're going to hear about a Lexus.
Yes, sir.
You said you paid for that Lexus. You never paid for that Lexus. Isn't that
I
the case?
paid Charlie cash for that Lexus.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. I think the state might disagree. Has the state disagreed with you on that point?
About me paying him cash? Yes, because there was nothing that was coming out of my account, but I paid him cash. I had the cash on me.
During the trial, the first trial, you were asked, do you know why it is that Charlie chose you out of all of his ex-girlfriends to call? I don't know why he called me. Do you recall those questions?
Yes, sir.
That was a lie, right?
I told you I lied in my first and second trial to save myself.
Well, let's get to the second trial. Just like you're lying here to save yourself, right?
I'm not saving myself. I'm telling the truth this time.
Right, because now all of a sudden, after 8 years, you have developed a conscience. I think that's what you told the jury.
No, it's because the father of my children was on death penalty at that time on my first trial, so I couldn't give up. If it was just Charlie, like I said from the trial, go ahead and arrest him. Nobody ever did.
He didn't get the death penalty after the first trial, and he was convicted, right?
Yes, sir.
And by the time of his second trial, you had no reason to protect him anymore. He was done.
No, sir. He was under appeal.
Okay, just like you're under appeal now.
Yes, sir.
So what you said to this jury about 20 minutes ago is you said to this jury, I'm here today to tell the truth, and I want to get your exact words. Because I want to do the right thing.
Yes, sir.
Isn't it because you want to go home? And that's the only way that you could ever go home is to help them. That's the only way you can go home by not being dead.
I was not promised anything. I'm doing this solely on myself. Clearly, you don't even see my attorneys in this room.
Let's talk about the second trial. Again, you lied when you testified that you didn't know anything about or were involved in the murder of Professor Markel, right?
Yes, sir. I told you I lied in my first and second trial to save myself.
Ma'am, we've heard it. If you could just answer the questions. Did you lie?
Yes, sir.
You lied when you testified that you knew nothing about Wendy's divorce, Wendi Adelson's divorce.
Yes, sir.
You lied when you said you didn't pick up money from Charlie's house on July 18th.
Yes, sir.
You lied when you said you knew nothing about stapled cash.
Yes, sir.
You lied when you said you didn't bring the money to Sigfredo or Luis Rivera the next day.
Yes, sir.
You lied again when you said you worked as a personal assistant for Charlie, right?
Yes, sir.
You lied repeatedly when you tried to discuss what had happened, what was being spoken at Dolce Vita, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, well, now let's talk about the lies that you told that the state didn't go over with you. Let's talk about your proffers, your cooperation.
Yes, sir.
So you were interviewed by the state twice in October and November 2022, correct?
Yes, sir.
And by the way, you've met with them a couple times since then, right?
A couple times.
Have you met with them
After?
since? Yeah, after that point?
Probably one time.
You met with Ms. Kappelman?
Yes, yes, sir.
Did Ms. Kappelman ask you about our defense during that meeting?
No, sir.
She didn't ask you about whether, for the first time, whether you ever threatened
No,
Charlie
sir.
Adelson? Now, when you met with them in October and November of 2022, this was after you got your life sentence, right?
Yes, sir.
And you met with them first in Marion County Jail on October 11th, right?
Marion County Jail? No, sir. I've never been in that county.
You met with them in the jail. I got the wrong jail, obviously.
I've never met with them in any jails.
Where did you meet with them?
I
the
was
first
already in DOC
Okay.
in Lowell.
You met with them in prison.
Yes, sir.
Apologies. And the second time, you met with them at the state attorney's office, right? Here in Tallahassee.
Yes, sir.
And both times, Special Agent Sanford was there,
Yes, sir.
Investigator Jason Newland was there,
Yes, sir.
and TPD Investigator Sherry Bennett were there.
Yes, sir.
And they asked you questions.
Yes, sir.
And each time, you told them a version of events that was very different from what you said at your trials, right?
Yes, sir.
In fact, during those 6 hours of interviews, you told them about 5 more versions, right?
5 different versions of it?
Yeah.
No, sir.
Oh, so you told them the same thing throughout the 6 hours that you met with them?
I believe so, but I think the first time you can't even visit more than 2 hours, so I don't know where you're getting 6 hours.
Well, maybe I'm wrong, but let's look. The first interview started at 9:26 a.m. and it ended at 11:44 a.m., so a little over 2 hours.
Yes, sir.
First interview. Your position right now, what you're telling this jury, is that the same thing you told them in the first interview, you told them in the second interview?
I believe so, yes, sir.
You believe so or you know so?
I know so. I believe so. I believe so.
You absolutely know so.
No, I don't, not verbatim exactly what I said.
Isn't it true that during the entire first interview you said you had nothing to do with the murder?
No, sir, I didn't say that.
All right, well, we're going to go through exact quotes, and we'll see if your memory can be refreshed.
Yes, sir.
By the way, during any of these interviews, did you give them any documentation, anything new, any text messages, documentation, WhatsApps, any new, as people call it, receipts? Did you give them any new evidence?
No, I'm in prison. I don't have anything.
It was just your words, right?
Yes, sir.
So let's talk about what you said. During the first proffer, which was a little over 2 hours,
Yes, sir.
you raised your hand and they put you under oath, right?
Yes, sir.
And throughout the proffer, the agents, particularly Special Agent Sanford, kept on telling you that you have to tell the truth, right?
Yes, sir.
He didn't believe you.
I mean, whatever his reasons are.
Was he
No.
frustrated with you during the interview?
Yes, sir.
In fact, 1 hour and 8 minutes into the proffer, he said to you that you were minimizing your involvement.
Hold on. What is the objection?
Hearsay, Your Honor.
Please approach. Your examination.
So let's go back. Your position, what you've told this jury, is you are completely consistent. You told the same story during the entire proffer, right?
I can't, like I told you, I can't remember verbatim what I've said from the first proffer and the second proffer.
Let's just talk about the first proffer.
Yes, sir.
Your view is that from the beginning of the first proffer to the end of the first proffer, you said the same thing throughout. That's what you're telling this jury.
From the first proffer to the second proffer, that I'm saying the same exact thing. I don't remember verbatim what I've said.
How about from the beginning of the first proffer to the end of the first proffer? What you told the jury is you were consistent from the beginning of the first proffer to the end of the first proffer. Do you recall saying that?
Yes, sir.
Is that still your testimony?
No, I was consistent about it? No, because it was very hard for me to confess what I've done.
So let me ask the question again.
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true that during the first proffer, for the first 1 hour and 8 minutes, you continued to say that you didn't murder Professor Markel?
No, sir, I didn't say that.
I don't understand your answer. So let me rephrase.
Okay.
Isn't it true that for the first half of the first proffer, you denied participation in the murder of Professor Markel?
No, sir, I was telling him what happened and how my involvement in it.
So your position is that throughout the entire first proffer, you admitted that you participated in the murder of Professor Markel.
Yes, sir.
Judge, may I proceed now?
You may.
Would it surprise you that 1 hour and 8 minutes into the first proffer, Special Agent Sanford said that you were minimizing your involvement in Professor Markel's murder?
Like he stated, I was minimizing it. It was hard for me to confess everything that I've suppressed for the past 7 years.
11 minutes later, he said that what you were telling him made absolutely no sense. Do you recall him saying that?
No, sir, I did not.
Well, let me see if I can show you. Does this refresh your recollection that Special Agent Sanford said all of it doesn't make sense? I'll withdraw it.
Please allow her to.
Does this refresh your recollection of what Agent Sanford said?
Just the line that you highlighted?
You can read before and after to make sure I'm not doing lawyer tricks.
Yes, sir. Can I?
Of course.
Please do yourself now.
Yes, sir. Yes, Agent Sanford is saying that why am I not remember conversations, specific conversations, and I told him I can't recall those specific conversations.
Was he telling you that what you were saying didn't make sense to him?
I'm going to object to what Agent Sanford said or his opinions.
Sustain, please lay the foundation to impeach specifically.
At some point in the interview, did he walk out on you?
Yes, he did on the second interview.
Yeah, okay. We're going to get to that. That's like 4 hours into your combined interviews, right?
I believe so.
Right? So you come back, and I think it's over an hour into the second interview, so actually my math isn't great. It's like 3.5 hours into interviewing. Agent Sanford gets so upset.
Judge, I'm going to object to Agent Sanford's opinions
I'll
or
rephrase.
actions or words.
He's withdrawing the question. Please move on.
Around 3 hours into these interviews, Agent Sanford decides to leave the room, right?
Yes, sir.
He was frustrated with you, right?
I believe so.
Truthfully, during your first interview, you kept on saying all of these things were jumbled in your head, right?
Yes, sir.
You said that about 11 times. Do you recall that?
I don't recall how many times I said it. No, sir.
You said that eventually, 33 minutes into the interview, you said you arranged through an envelope that Charlie gave you, but that you never opened it for Sigfredo to rough up Professor Markel. Do you recall saying that?
Repeat the question.
33 minutes into the interview,
Yes, sir.
you admitted that you arranged through an envelope that Charlie gave you, but that you never opened,
Yes, sir.
for Sigfredo to rough up Professor Markel. Do you recall that?
I've never said Professor Markel's name.
To rough up the deceased.
What do you mean by that? Can you explain?
You told them 33 minutes into the interview
Yes.
that Charlie had given you an envelope that you had never opened, that miraculously got to Sigfredo Garcia, and the purpose of it was to rough up his ex-brother-in-law?
No, because I didn't know what the contents of what was in the envelope, so I wouldn't have said that.
You said that somehow that plan had transitioned to murder, but according to what you told investigators, you never knew when that happened. Do you recall saying that?
Repeat the question again, sir.
You said that somehow the rough-up plan had transitioned to murder.
I never said rough up or any of those words. That's why it's confusing me what you're stating.
Let's say it again.
Yes, sir.
You said that somehow the plan had transitioned to murder. But according to what you told investigators, you never knew when that transition happened.
Well, at that time, I didn't know.
At the time that you were interviewed?
No, not at my interview, but when it was happening, as they're interviewing me and we're going through the scenario.
I'm going to show you 186 to 187. You know what, I'll just move on. You told investigators during your first interview, 2 hours into it, 2 hours and 1 minute to be exact,
Yes, sir.
that you never spoke to Charlie about the change in plans,
I never spoke to Charlie about the change in plans.
meaning it going to become a murder.
I'm confused about the questions you're asking. Is this what I said?
Yes, what you said to these investigators just a year ago after you were convicted for life, didn't you tell investigators you didn't know it was going to be a murder?
When we were talking about this, like I said, it was hard for me to confess my involvement in this.
Right, so
Can you show me where I said this?
let's just go with what you just said.
Yes, sir.
So 2 hours into your first interview, when you said this, you still were not admitting that you had a part in the murder.
Yes, it was very hard for me to do this, especially that they came to me in prison where,
Right.
Why are all these investigators coming in?
Okay, so we are now where we started, which is during this first proffer, just a year ago, under oath again, you refused to admit at first that you had anything to do with the murder, that you were a part of the murder.
Yes,
think
sir.
that's-
Yes.
Okay,
It's hard for me to admit it. Yes, sir, it is. It's still hard for me to admit it right now.
okay. During your first proffer, 9 minutes and 14 seconds into it, do you recall being asked the following questions? And as you saw in trial, Garcia and Rivera made a trip in June. What can you tell us about that? Answer. See, like I don't even remember. I mean, obviously, like you're telling me to, like, remember from what I heard at trial. I learned a lot of things from trial. That's why it's so hard. And I want to say the right thing, but like, I don't remember them going up on a first trip. Do you recall saying that during this proffer?
I don't recall it. If you could show it to me.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You bet.
Does that refresh your recollection that you said that?
Yes, sir.
You were asked during your proffer on page 68, I don't know how long into it, probably about a third into it. Question, before that trip, you knew that Lewis was going to go with him on that trip. Answer, no, I never knew he was going with him. Do you recall answering that way?
Yes, sir.
You also said during that proffer, 63 minutes in, that you didn't know Luis Rivera was going on the second trip to Tallahassee. Do you recall saying that?
Yes, sir.
During that interview on page 83, you told investigators, this is just a year ago, that on the night of July 18th, you didn't know that Charlie's brother-in-law had been shot.
Can you show me that, sir?
Sure.
Yes, because I'm emphasizing I don't know Dan Markel.
You said that you didn't know that Dan Markel had been shot, right?
Yes, sir.
You told that to investigators a year ago, that that's what, on that night, you had no idea that there was a shooting.
Yes, I was partly denying probably still my involvement in it. This is something I've suppressed for a long time, sir.
Now, what's also interesting is when you described July 18th, you said Charlie was panicked.
Yes, sir.
You said he took his Xanax and you took his Xanax.
Yes, sir. He gave me.
You said that he was upset.
I never said he was upset. He was just frantic.
Let's move on to the second proffer.
Yes, sir.
The second proffer was 6 weeks after the first proffer. Do you recall that?
This is when I came back. I came here?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
And you met with investigators for 3.5 hours this time,
If that's what it says.
from 10:06 in the morning to 1:38 in the afternoon.
Yes, sir.
At the beginning of the interview, you told investigators you didn't know why you were there, right?
Yes, I didn't know what I got pulled out for.
And 15 minutes into the interview, Agent Sanford left the room, right?
Yes, sir.
And he didn't come back.
No, sir.
During the interview, you were told, do you recall being told that you weren't giving the state anything to make them want to do anything for you?
Repeat that question, sir.
Do you recall that during the interview, you were told that you weren't giving the state anything to make them want to do anything for you?
Who stated that?
Investigator Bennett.
Okay, yes, sir.
She was upset.
I mean, we were just talking about the same thing over again.
When she said that you had a real issue, right?
Not that I can recall. What's the issue?
Well, if you didn't help the state and give them something that they could work with, there was only one way you were ever getting out of prison, and that's in a box.
Why do you keep stating that, sir?
You're in jail for the rest of your life, right?
Yes, sir.
If the state doesn't help you, the only way you're getting out of prison is when you die.
But they never said they were going to help me. I wasn't promised
That's not my
anything.
question. What's the only way that you're getting out of prison if the state doesn't help you?
I'll die in prison.
During this second proffer, They asked you, you mean to tell me that you had no clue that he came to Tallahassee? Answer, he never told me he was going to Tallahassee. Do you recall saying that you didn't know that Sigfredo Garcia was going to Tallahassee?
Yes, sir. I never knew he went to Tallahassee.
You never knew Sigfredo Garcia went to Tallahassee?
No, sir.
Okay. During these proffers, you never told the state about monthly payments, did you?
Monthly payments?
That Charlie was making monthly payments to you?
What, the checks from the Adelson Institute?
Yes.
They were aware of that.
How about the cash he was giving you every month?
He wasn't giving me any cash every month.
Oh, really?
Yes.
He wasn't giving you $2,000 of cash every single month that you're heard on the wires trying to accept?
No, sir.
He was just giving you an Adelson Institute check?
Yes, sir. What would the $2,000 be for?
Before he gave you the Adelson Institute checks, you were getting $3,000 a month, right?
No, sir.
It wasn't until 1 hour and 13 minutes in the first proffer that you first admitted that you didn't work for the Adelson Institute, right?
Yes, sir. I lied about it.
In the proffer.
In the proffer, I don't know when I said it, but I lied in my trials about getting those checks from the Adelson Institute. Because I said those were checks that I needed to show so that I can get insurance for my children.
You recall them asking you about a meeting with Charlie in the car before Dolce Vita?
Yes, sir.
And you said that you couldn't recall what was discussed?
Yes, sir.
You recall that during the second proffer, you told the state that you didn't know the police were at your door during the wire? And if you had known they were at the door, you would have let them in?
I don't think I mentioned it in that way, but they didn't announce themselves when they were knocking on the door.
In fact, aren't we going to see in the wires that you were hiding from the police?
I was not hiding. I was at home.
Weren't you hiding at home?
From what? I was working from home that day.
Weren't you making a bunch of phone calls to a lot of people saying, the police are at my door, I don't know what to do, I can't answer the door, I'm afraid? Weren't you hiding from them?
Somebody was knocking at the door. They didn't state who they were, so I was calling Sigfredo, and nobody was picking up. Then one of his coworkers finally called back and said that there's FBI over there speaking to him, and he's going to come by the house.
And he came by the house?
Yes.
And you all discussed how you were going to stay hidden and not answer the door, right?
I didn't discuss anything. They just said that there was like an FBI agent or an agent outside. So I just never answered.
And you decided not to answer the door and let them in, right?
No, why would I let them in?
Let me make sure that we're being clear here.
Yes, sir.
Did you know that the police were outside your door?
I didn't know who was outside my door. I didn't know until his coworker had stated that there was an undercover or an agent outside.
And after he stated that, did you know that there was police outside your door?
They were gone.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like they knocked.
Okay.
And then they were gone.
You didn't stay hidden for over 45 minutes
No,
while
sir.
these phone calls are happening?
I was at home. I just didn't open the door.
Okay. During the entire first proffer and 2/3 of the second proffer, you never said that Charlie did it or ordered it. Isn't that true?
Not specifically, no.
Now today you come in here and you talk about how on Halloween, Charlie asked you if there was someone who could hurt his ex-brother-in-law, right?
I stated that on the proffer.
That's fine.
Yes, sir.
It took you a while to state it in the proffer, but I admit you did. It took
Yes,
you
sir.
about an hour and 40 minutes. But today, that's what your testimony was, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you know that you had only started dating Charlie Adelson about 2 weeks before Halloween?
Probably. We just started talking. I don't know specifically if it was 2 weeks.
Do you know that at the time of Halloween 2013, Charlie Adelson had absolutely no idea anything about your ex?
I wouldn't know, sir.
Well, let me see if I can refresh your memory. Do you recall text messages in November 27th of 2013 where you said to...
Objection, improper refreshing.
Sustained.
Okay.
Please show the witness the document.
Well, let me ask some questions first.
Go ahead.
Isn't it true that Charlie Adelson didn't know about your ex until November 27th, 2013?
I wouldn't know, sir.
And even then, he didn't know much about him?
I wouldn't know.
Let me approach with,
You may.
what number is it? Defense Exhibit 34.
May I see the item, Mr. Rushford?
You have it, just text messages.
What am I looking at, sir?
These text messages between you and Charlie Adelson. Does that refresh your recollection that he didn't know about your ex until at the earliest, November 27th, 2013?
Yes, sir.
Halloween's in October, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, you talk about this letter and Charlie printing it up. In all the times in Charlie's house, you ever see him, does he have a computer? He doesn't own a computer, right?
He had a little office in his house, but I don't know if there was a computer or not. I don't recall.
Do you recall during these interviews that the investigators kept on pushing you whether Charlie gave you money during the trips?
Repeat the question, sir.
Do you recall during these interviews that the investigators kept on pushing you, asking you a lot of questions about whether Charlie Adelson gave you any money before the two men took the trips?
Yes, and I answered them.
I know you did.
Okay.
And it took you 22 minutes left in the second proffer where you finally said he gave you a few $100s before each trip.
Yes, sir.
Repeatedly before then, you couldn't even remember that, right? You were confused as you said it.
No, I could remember it. It was just very hard when I was speaking, especially when I was speaking with Sergeant Sanford in the room because he was frustrated with me. So once he left the room, it was an easier conversation to have, and I wasn't so pressured.
It was an easier conversation to have because, in fact, Investigator Bennett started to play the part of Katherine Magbanua, right?
I don't know what you mean by that,
Well,
sir.
she started to testify for you.
No, sir, she did not.
It wasn't mostly her talking and you saying yes?
No, sir.
isn't it true that it wasn't until an hour and 16 minutes and 31 seconds into the second proffer where you were still continuing to say that you didn't become aware that this was going to be a murder until sometime between the first and second trips to Tallahassee?
Yes, sir. I told you it was very hard for me to admit my part in all of this. I'm sorry.
So 4 hours into your proffers, you were still saying that you didn't know the first trip was for a murder. That's fair to say, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's go on to a little different subject. You started dating Sigfredo Garcia just after high school.
Yes, sir.
By the time you broke up with him, you had been with Sigfredo on and off for more than a decade.
Yes, sir.
By the way, when you dated Charlie Adelson, he thought you were broken up with Sigfredo Garcia, right?
I was broken up with him.
Well, did you have sexual relations with Sigfredo Garcia while dating Charlie Adelson?
Yes, I did.
Charlie didn't know that, right?
I mean, that's not something I would tell him.
Now, you considered him to be your husband.
Yes, sir.
You met Charlie Adelson at work
Yes, sir.
at a place called Sophie Dental.
Sophie Dental.
Sorry, Sophie Dental.
Yes, sir.
And that was in South Beach.
Yes, sir.
And you started dating in the middle of October of 2013.
In the middle of October? No, we started dating before that.
When did you start dating?
I don't recall the exact date, but it was definitely before October.
If I told you
September.
do you recall that your first date was at a restaurant kind of in the building?
I believe so, yes.
If I told you that the date of that was October 9th, would that refresh your recollection? Could
Yes,
that be
sir.
right?
Possibly, yes, sir.
Now, when you dated Charlie Adelson, he treated you well.
Yes, sir.
I think you said you didn't know he had money. You knew he had money.
I mean, he wasn't very flashy with it. I know he was well off.
He took you to nice dinners.
Yes, sir.
That was different than your past relationship, right?
I've been in nice dinners with Sigfredo.
Did Charlie treat you nicer than Sigfredo?
I wouldn't say that he treated me nicer at that time, yes, because I was going through a lot with Sigfredo.
Did Charlie ever lay hands on you?
No, sir.
Did Sigfredo?
We've gotten into arguments, yes.
One where he ripped off your necklace?
No, he's never ripped off any necklace
No?
of mine. No.
Now, at first, Charlie was the pursuer. Is that fair to say? He pursued you.
Yes, sir.
Over time, you became more serious.
I believe so.
And he made it clear to you over time, namely in the spring of 2014, that he didn't want anything different than casual, right?
I mean, I think we were both in agreement with that, yes.
But you had questions about it. You asked him, right?
I believe so.
And he told you, I like the way things are.
Yes, sir.
Now, Sigfredo came to know that you were dating Charlie, correct?
Yes, sir.
And during your second trial, you testified that you told Sigfredo about Charlie to make Sigfredo mad.
Probably.
You wanted to throw it in his face that you were dating a successful dentist, right?
That I was dating somebody, period, because I never really dated anybody after Sigfredo.
Sigfredo hated Charlie.
I mean, yes.
You told Charlie on one occasion, if you see him, run. Isn't that what you told him?
Not that I can recall now.
Is it possible that you told him that?
No, but he would be scared of Sigfredo, yes.
Sigfredo considered you the love of his life, right?
I believe so.
He made it clear to you that he wanted you back and didn't want you to be with Charlie, right?
It's not that he made it clear, but we were trying to work it out for our family.
Now, Charlie talks a lot, right?
Yes, he does.
And he repeats himself over and over.
Yes, sir.
As a traveling periodontist, he's in the car a lot for work, right?
Yes, sir.
And what does he do when he's in the car a lot? Talks on the phone?
Talk on the phone, yes, sir.
And he'd call you a lot on the phone, right?
He would at that time, yes.
And at that time, he would sometimes call you early in the morning, right?
Yes, sir.
He'd call you sometimes in his breaks at work.
Yes, sir.
He'd call you late at night.
Yes, we were dating.
Exactly. He'd talk to you a ton.
Yes, sir.
He talks to his mom a lot on the phone too, right?
I believe so.
Well, you witnessed it, right?
Yes.
You would be with him a lot when he would talk to his mom, right? On the phone.
Yes, sir.
And by the way, you talk on the phone a lot with Sigfredo Garcia, right?
Yes, sir.
And that makes sense because he's the father of your two children, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, in 2014, you became aware of Charlie's family issues, right?
Yes, sir.
You heard him talking on the phone a lot to his mom, right?
Yeah, he's always talking to his mom.
And also, when you guys would go out, as you know, Charlie likes to talk, right?
Yes, sir.
And so a topic of frequent conversation would be what he had just talked to his mom about, right?
No, he never told me what he was talking to his mom about.
No, so he never told you about the problems that his sister was having? He wouldn't recount those conversations that he was having with his mom?
Not when he's on the phone with his mom. Maybe if we're just, laying down or talking, he'd mention it once in a blue moon.
And you would ask him questions about it, right?
Not really.
He told you about this TV was cheaper than a hitman joke many times, right?
Yes, he's made that comment before.
And he repeated it to many people, right?
Yes, sir, he has.
He makes a lot of bad jokes, right?
Yes, he does.
Did you ever tell him, Charlie, why are you making that joke when we're actually hiring a hitman? Like, don't you think that's a bad idea? Did you ever say that to him?
No, because feels like he's untouchable.
No, because you really weren't hiring a hitman. He didn't know he was hiring a hitman, right? That's why you didn't tell him that, right?
He knew he was hiring a hitman.
So when he made that joke in front of Professor Lacoste on March 11th at Yardbird.
That he made that joke?
Yeah, you know he made the joke at that dinner, right?
I don't recall that. No, sir.
Okay.
Unless I was talking to Wendi and I didn't pay attention to what they were talking about.
Well, let's talk about that dinner a little bit on March 11th, just 6 weeks before the first attempt that in your proffers you didn't know about. You all ate outside on the patio?
Yes, sir.
And during this dinner, you and Wendi talked a lot about your exes, didn't you?
Not that we talked a lot about the exes. I always speak of my children, so I'm pretty sure I mentioned my kids and she mentioned her kids.
You didn't probe information from Wendi about her ex, and while you were that's why you brought up your exes, your ex?
No, sir. We did not talk about any exes.
Were you aware that Sigfredo and Luis Rivera were sitting in a car scoping you out?
I didn't know that until my trial.
Now, the state showed you a picture of you on the beach with Wendi Adelson.
Yes, sir.
No discussion about a murder plot during that
No.
The jet ski incident, was Charlie scared?
Yes, sir.
Were you upset?
Of course.
Did it cause a whole string of text messages and fights between you and Sigfredo?
After that incident, yes.
You were afraid that Charlie was going to break up with you, right?
Not really.
Really, your text messages don't show that you were upset that Charlie might break up with you? That Sigfredo was trying to run your life?
Well, I was upset, but I didn't really care if Charlie was going to break up with me or not.
Now, I want to take you to the week of the murder. And we'll start with July 14th. You had dinner with Charlie the night of July 14th, right?
Not that I can recall.
Oh, you don't recall having dinner with him the night of July 14th?
No, sir.
Are you sure you didn't have dinner with him the night of July 14th?
I can't recall. If you'd show me something.
Do you recall him working late and coming towards your house and meeting him at a place near the water on July 14th?
No, sir.
Well, let's do it this way. If you had dinner with him on July 14th, just 4 days before the murder,
Yes, sir.
did you pick up money from him at that point in time?
No, sir, because I don't even remember that dinner.
Assuming that the dinner happened,
Yes,
which I
sir.
think the state's going to prove,
Okay.
did you pick up any money from him at that dinner?
No, sir. I don't even recall that dinner.
Fair enough. Do you recall having lunch with him on July 17th, the day before the murder?
No, sir.
Well, let me try to refresh your memory on this. Do you recall on July 16th that Charlie worked late and went out to dinner with Erica Johnson?
I can't recall.
Do you recall that you got in a fight with him that night because you thought he might be cheating on you?
No, sir, I don't recall it.
Do you recall that there are text messages in which you were upset that he was out so late? You don't recall that?
No, sir. Do you have something to show me?
I don't need to. Do you recall that he told you on that call that he had worked late, that he had gone out with Erica, and that he would have a lunch with you the next day?
I don't recall any of those days, sir.
Do you recall that on the call on that night, the evening of the 16th, it's actually the very morning of the 17th, it's after midnight, that you were adamant that you wanted to have dinner with him on the 18th?
No, sir. I
You don't
don't
remember
recall
that?
any of those days. That's why I'm
You don't
asking if
remember that,
can
it's fine.
Show me.
The answer is you don't remember that, right?
No, I can't recall.
I get to ask the questions,
Yes, sir.
okay?
Yes.
That's how this works.
Yes, sir.
Now, you went to lunch with him near his house. Do you recall that?
No, sir.
One moment.
Yes, sir.
Do you recall going to Vila's? It's like a Cuban-Mexican place right by Charlie's house.
I know of the restaurant, but I don't remember the date when we went. Or, we've eaten there before, yes?
You don't recall going there the day before the murder?
No, sir.
Nonetheless, if you had been there, you didn't collect any money that day, right?
No, sir.
Do you recall that during that lunch, you got in a big fight?
During what lunch?
The lunch on the 17th that you don't remember.
How can I tell you what happened if I don't remember the date and you're not showing me anything?
Let's talk about after the murder. One moment, Your Honor.
Take your time.
Isn't it true that Charlie Adelson gave you $138,000 the night of the murder, not $100,000?
I never counted the money.
Isn't it true that you were paid $3,000 every month after the murder?
No, sir.
Isn't it true that you told Charlie Adelson that a terrible thing had happened, your friend got an idea to do this, you didn't know anything about it, but you would help him?
Repeat that question, sir.
Isn't it true that you told Charlie Adelson that a friend of yours had done this, that you had talked too much, but that you would do everything you could to help Charlie Adelson?
No, sir.
Isn't it true that you told him that if he ever went to the police, these people would do to him and his family what they had done to Professor Markel?
No, sir.
If the state proves that for the next 20 months you received payments, does the state have it wrong?
That I received payments?
For the next 20 months after July 18th, if the state proves, they're going to bring up a financial person who's going to show cash payments. When the state proves that, do they have it wrong?
No, because I deposited throughout every month.
The payments that Charlie were making to you?
No, what Sigfredo had given to me.
Is it true that you were the mastermind behind Professor Markel's murder?
No, sir. That was Charlie.
I'm sure it was.
I didn't have any information on Mr. Markel.
Ms. Magbanua, do not volunteer information.
Yes.
Wait for a question, respond accordingly to the question.
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
By the way, on these wires that we're going to hear, you're repeatedly lying to Charlie, right?
Repeatedly lying about what?
Well, you're telling him that you're calling the undercover number, right?
Yes, I lied to
You
him.
never called the undercover number.
No, because I was telling Sigfredo to call that number.
Ma'am, let me ask the questions.
I'm answering.
I know you have an agenda, but let me ask the questions.
Objection, move to strike, argument ended.
Sustained.
Members of the jury are to disregard the last comment about any agendas. Please continue.
On those wires, you tell Charlie Adelson that you've called the undercover number, don't you?
Yes, I said that.
And you never called the undercover number.
Of course, why would I call it?
You tell Charlie Adelson that you tried to call the number, but it's a non-working number. Do you recall saying that?
I believe so, yes.
And that was a lie.
Yes, we were all lying to each other.
You call, Judge.
He was responding to your question. You don't have to like the answer.
I actually love it. You never lied to Sigfredo on those wires, did you?
Yes, I did.
When did you lie to Sigfredo on those wires?
Well, he was lying to me, actually.
I asked a different question. When did you lie to Sigfredo on those wires?
No.
Give me one example of lying to Sigfredo.
You're right. I'm stating that Sigfredo was lying to me.
Ms. Magbanua, I'm going to ask the question one more time.
No, I didn't lie to Sigfredo.
You never once lied to Sigfredo Garcia on those wires.
Not that I can recall, no.
But you repeatedly lied to Charlie Adelson on those wires, didn't you?
Yes, sir, I did.
By the way, you and Sigfredo Garcia talked about how you needed to get a burner phone, right?
No, Sigfredo was the one who got the burner phones.
Okay. You and Sigfredo got burner phones, right?
Sigfredo bought the burner phones, yes.
And you used a burner phone, right?
Yes, he advised me to do so.
Did you ever talk to Charlie Adelson about getting a burner phone?
I wasn't aware, but I thought he had one.
You told Charlie Adelson that Sigfredo Garcia left a voicemail for the undercover. You recall telling him that?
I believe so, yes.
That was a lie, right?
I believe Sigfredo did leave a voicemail to the undercover.
You think he did, or you think they just heard about the voicemail, that he actually never called the undercover?
If he said he did, he probably did.
Now, shortly after the murder, you and Charlie break up, right?
Yes, sir.
Like immediately after.
I don't know if it's immediately after, but we stopped, hanging out as much.
Now, you keep on saying that the state hasn't promised you anything, right?
Yes, sir.
But you're hoping that they're going to help you, right?
Of course, I want to see my children again.